One, this is the International Peace Coalition. My name is Anastasia Battle. I'll be your moderator today for the 100th meeting of the International Peace Coalition. Thank you all so much for all of your participation, to the veteran participants in this dialogue, as well as new participants today. We have a very fantastic lineup, which really demonstrates the power that this coalition has been moving towards and having these dialogue processes over these 100 weeks. We created this forum in order to bring people of whatever ideology you're from, as long as it's not evil and intent on harming human beings, you are welcome here to create true peace. And we've had some success in that, and you'll see that today. To open us up for the opening panel of the discussion, will be Helga Zepp-LaRouche, who is the founder of the Schiller Institute and the initiator of the International Peace Coalition. Please go ahead.
Well, let me first greet all of you. We are now meeting for the 100th time in a row, and I unfortunately have to say that the peace has not come closer. As a matter of fact, we are seeing a very disturbing increase of conflicts. While the Ukraine situation is far from settled, there is some motion, and the situation in Gaza is absolutely horrendous beyond description. But we have seen now a new conflict arriving, which underlines our point that the conflicts may have and do have regional, historically specific causes. But nevertheless, the reason why we have them is that the entire dynamic is caused by a geopolitical confrontation between what you could call an old system, which is clearly on the decline, and a new system, which is the system of the global majority, which is on the rise. And we have always tended to locate the regional conflicts in the context of that larger strategic battle. And while a specific investigation is still required to find out what caused this recent flare-up between India and Pakistan into the terrorist attack where 26 people were killed in Kashmir, and that remains that result of such an independent investigation obviously will reveal what the real causes are. But if I tell you some of the circumstantial elements, I think there are some leads. Now, first of all, the situation is escalating. Prime Minister Modi has banned the airspace over India for all Pakistani planes. He has also given the military free hand to choose whatever action they deem necessary. The Pakistani chief of staff of the army, General Munir, has answered to that by saying that any Indian military action will find a swift and robust response from the side of the Pakistani military. Now, obviously, this has the potential of really leading to a military war, which, as we are talking here, could erupt any minute. The Pakistan information minister even talked about nuclear weapons, saying all the Pakistani nuclear weapons have been trained in the direction of India. Some hardliners on the Indian side also mentioned nuclear weapons, which obviously, if this would happen, would be a total catastrophe with unforeseen consequences, given the strategic location of India and Pakistan. Now, fortunately, Iran and China have tried to mediate, to try to talk to both sides to cool the situation. But one also should keep in mind that the Pakistan defense minister said that Pakistan has been instrumentalized many times in the past by the Anglo-Americans. I mean, he didn't say so, but we know that Zbigniew Brzezinski in 1975 had briefed the Trilateral Commission meeting in Tokyo that the West would play the, quote, Islamic card against the Soviet Union. And indeed, the building up of the Mujahideen and the radical Islam was promoted in the 80s in the war against the Soviet Union in Afghanistan. And naturally, after that war was over, these radicalized jihadists spread throughout the region to Chechnya, to Xinjiang, to Pakistan, to many other countries in the region. And, obviously, as General Flynn already said in 2012, these elements were utilized by the United States. I mean, this was an admission by an American general. So obviously, this is a very serious situation, which we can only hope that reason will prevail. Now, I mean, there is the danger of a war. I'm not playing it down one iota. Now, the situation in Ukraine, the new element obviously is that a new deal was announced between the United States and Ukraine, whereby the United States will have the right to exploit some of the raw materials in Ukraine, rare earths and similar things. President Trump said there are 350 billion worth of military expenditures from the past 3 years, which need to be balanced. President Zelensky only talked about 100 billion. And naturally, it seems that there is a component whereby US military will stay behind and be present in Ukraine. Now, how the Russians will see that, I have not been able to confirm, until the beginning of this discussion. But I would imagine that that is not to the liking of the Russians. But however, the deputy UN ambassador in New York, Polyansky, just in a new interview re-emphasized the positive noting by the side of the Russians that President Trump is admitting that the NATO expansion to the east has been the main dynamic causing the war in Ukraine. And I think that is an important matter. However, it is unfortunately not only the United States and Russia who are concerned to settle and re-normalize relations between the US and Russia, the two largest nuclear powers in the world. But unfortunately, some crazy Europeans are committed to keep this war going. A so-called coalition of the willing has formed between the British, the French, Germany, Poland, the Baltics, and the Scandinavian countries. And they are determined to keep feeding weapons into Ukraine, to keep the war going. And I think it's quite telling that Ambrose Evans Pritchard, very known and dubious journalist, if he deserves that name, I don't know exactly, if he's not some intelligence spook. He said that he was full of praise for the deal, the US-Ukrainian raw material deal, and said this is a fantastic thing. If the war in Ukraine keeps going for one more year, then the Russian economy will collapse for sure. So you can see the intention of those people who are in this coalition of the willing, that they do not want peace. They want to keep the war going. They have not given up on their aim to ruin Russia and possibly even cut Russia into many pieces, which brings us to the absolute red line of nuclear war. Now, we have the ongoing tariff war, which, Trump is going back and forth one day in this direction, the next day in another. But, this has the potential of triggering in the short term a complete blowout of the financial system. Because obviously Trump wants to re-industrialize the United States. He wants to undo the excesses of the neoliberal model used in the last decades. But obviously, when he says tariffs will protect the US economy, that was the case of in the times of Alexander Hamilton, when he protected the nascent young economy of the United States with tariffs. But it does not apply clearly for a very interconnected world economy where many products are being produced in several countries. Spare parts are produced in Canada, in Mexico, in Africa, in all kinds of places. So it could actually not only lead to an increase of consumer prices in the United States, but it could lead to a default of emerging markets and over-indebted American firms, and that way could trigger a collapse of the financial system. I don't think that Trump has really thought that part through. There is another element which is reported by the American defense magazine Defense One, and they say that given the fact that not only are most of the rare earths in China, but even more importantly, some of the industrial equipment to refine these raw materials are all in China and therefore cannot be replaced in the short term by anybody else. And lo and behold, over 78% of all US weapons do need these Chinese rare earths from China. So maybe the US defense has shot itself in the own foot by imposing these tariffs. Now, obviously, the other absolutely horrendous situation is the ongoing genocide in Gaza. Now, since the 2nd of March, the Israeli government and the IDF have imposed a complete blockade on Gaza. No food, no medical assistance, ongoing fighting, pushing people back and forth. I mean, it is, in all conventions, it is stated that to use hunger as a weapon of war is a war crime, at least, and a possible part of a general genocide. And, so this is why we have decided, if you look at only these 3 crisis spots, and I could add Congo, Sudan, Haiti, there are many areas in the world which cry for vengeance and help. And, the dynamic is towards getting worse, not better. So therefore, we have decided to call for an international mobilization. We must get a breakthrough. We cannot just be passive watchers of this horrendous danger, which potentially could lead to World War III, and sit by. So we have promoted the Oasis plan since especially the October 7th attack. And many forces have endorsed it, who say that economic development is the new name for peace. So given the fact that in the beginning of June, there is a big UN conference in New York devoted to the two-state solution. Now, in the meantime, the Egyptian government has forwarded a reconstruction plan for Gaza, which has been endorsed by the Arab League and other Arab countries. So we want to call on the International Peace Coalition to go into a 5-week accelerated mobilization to put the Oasis plan on the agenda together with the two-state solution when this UN conference in June takes place. Because adding the economic development to the entire region, in our view, is the absolute necessary ingredient to not only solve the Gaza situation, but to create conditions for peace. And, in a certain sense, we have been, confirmed in that effort by the final Urbi et Orbi, which Pope Francis was saying just the day before he died, where he recalled all the many sufferings in the world, all the peoples who are being victimized by war from Palestine, Israel, Lebanon, Congo, Sudan, and many others, and told these people that he is praying for them. But then he basically warned of the danger of a nuclear arms race and called on people to reject the logic of fear and the logic of war. And he basically said people have to promote development, instead calling development the weapon of peace. And I think we are not far from taking that as an endorsement of the OASIS plan, because the OASIS plan is a weapon of peace, which we absolutely must bring to fruit in this period of 5 weeks. Now, having said that, we still reiterate that, as important as a regional solution like the OASIS plan for the Middle East is, I believe that only if we overcome geopolitics, or if we overcome the idea that one always needs an enemy, that one always has to have a zero-sum game where one wins, the other loses, or for that matter, that it is the right of one country or a group of countries to contain the rise of another country, because realistically, I think that the idea to contain the rise of China is simply impossible. China is right now way, way, way ahead of anybody in the West. The Australian Strategic Policy Institute, in their critical technology checker, just reported that of 64 advanced technologies, China is leading in 57, and of 10 areas of advanced technology, it's in 9, it's China in the lead. And if you ever go to China, which you should, you will see, they're way, way, way ahead in so many areas that it's completely ludicrous. There are 1.4 billion people. The United States has a little bit more than 300. European Union has 500 million. So there is no way how that can be remedied in the way people think. So I think that is why we have to absolutely get to a new paradigm, one where everybody puts the one humanity first, because it is okay to be a patriot, but it is not okay to be a patriot against other parts of the world. You have to be a patriot fighting for your nation in affinity with the well-being of the one humanity, which always must come first. So we are calling for a new international security and development architecture, which must take into account the interest of every single country in the tradition of the Peace of Westphalia, which is the precedent that such an approach can work. So that is what I wanted to say in the beginning.
Thank you very much, Helga, for your opening and your overview of what's happening in the world. I'm sure many people on here very much appreciate that. I'll include a number of links for things that you've described, including the document for the new security and development architecture and the principles involved in that. So people should take a look. Next, I'd like to bring on Colonel Richard Black, who is a regular on the International Peace Coalition, a good friend, and former head of the U.S. Army's Criminal Law Division at the Pentagon, and former Virginia State Senator. And thank you so much, Senator Black, for joining us and being part of the discussion today.
Thank you, Anastasia. I appreciate that. I'm going to take a little bit different track than Helga did. She had an excellent summary of the current ongoing challenges that we have. And what I'm going to talk about is a little bit of background right now, but I think it's something that's important for us to be aware of. What I want to do is suggest that we need a note of caution regarding the gravity of the potential for war with China. There's been a lot of talk over recent years about, rather casual talk about going to war with China. And during the Biden administration, Washington became wildly provocative towards China. You had the Biden administration, the president approved a secret nuclear strategy, and he ordered U.S. forces to prepare for a possible coordinated nuclear confrontation with Russia, China, and North Korea. In other words, to prepare for a global nuclear holocaust that would perhaps kill 2/3 of the world's population. In 2022, we had Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi. She took a group of U.S. officials and visited Taiwan for the express purpose of provoking a reaction by China. The U.S. has since poured immense sums of weaponry into Taiwan, building it up. Taiwan, of course, being a very sensitive political topic for the Chinese, and one that they always try to keep a lid on. But we have a tendency to constantly be poking a sharp stick in the eye when it comes to Taiwan. In March of 2024, Taiwan announced that the U.S., under President Biden, had stationed special forces trainers just 3 miles off the Chinese coast. And this was an apparent attempt to goad the Chinese into taking some sort of offensive action. In January of 2024, the Pentagon spokesman, General Patrick Ryder, said that China was the pacing challenge of the Department of Defense. They came up with a new term, pacing, or new in the jargon. Pacing suggests a sense of urgency and immediacy, and this was amplified by comments by General Michael Minahan, who was the head of the Air Mobility Command, a 4-star general, and he said, "My gut tells me we will fight in 2025, fight with China, fight a war with China in 2025." Now, it is true that China is undertaking an unprecedented military buildup, very large increases in naval and air power, nuclear, conventional, cyber, space capabilities. However, if you look at the most recent tally of military spending, in the year 2024, the U.S. spent 3 times as much as China on military forces, despite this large buildup that is taking place there. I need to point out something that people need to be aware of. The last major war fought by China was in 1979. Most of the people here, perhaps, well, we have a little older group, but most people were not even born in 1979, 56 years ago. So that was the last major war that China had. Meanwhile, the United States has been almost continually at war during these past years. Now, it's very interesting that the Rand Corporation under Timothy Heath said that despite the buildup, that there is doubt regarding the combat readiness of China, and that 40% of their training time is spent on political topics. They have a divided command system where political commissaires co-run the units. So Rand Corporation said that the possibility of war is very remote. Others see it otherwise. They point to the big shipbuilding program, and they react somewhat nervously to the fact that China has its first overseas military base in Djibouti, and at the same time, the United States has 750 overseas bases. Now, what I just ask you to do is to consider the enormity of a possible war with China and to compare that with Vietnam. The United States fought Vietnam for a span of 10 years. It was a very bloody, very high intensity war, and we lost 58,000. And I want to make comparisons between that war, which eventually ended with the U.S. defeat, and what we might encounter with China. The Vietnam War had an intensity in terms of people killed, that was 19 times the intensity of the more recent war on terror, which incorporated the invasion of many countries. First of all, the geographic size of China versus Vietnam. China is 29 times the size of Vietnam. It is immense relative to Vietnam. The population, well, relative to the population of the US at the time of the Vietnam War, the population of China is 37 times larger than the population of Vietnam during the Vietnam War. And this is relatively speaking. In terms of weapons, Vietnam was a very primitive country. It had no nuclear weapons. All of its weapons were supplied by Soviet Union or by Russia, rather Soviet Union or by China. So Vietnam had no nuclear weapons. China has 600 nuclear weapons. China also has hypersonic weapons, which the United States does not have at this time. Industrial output is very important in war. And in terms of industrial manufacturing output, North Vietnam was a poor subsistence country with an agricultural economy. The US was the world's powerhouse in industry at that time, manufacturing 23% of all the world's goods. Today, China significantly outperforms the US in industrial output. China produces 29% of the globe's manufactured goods, the US only 16%. Tremendous disparity there. If you look also at the physical geography of the two countries, Vietnam was a coastal country. Very little width to the country. It ranged from a high of 310 miles in depth from the coast down to as narrow as 30 miles. So it was a very narrow sliver of land that we fought over. China, on the other hand, is a very vast country, and while it has a large coastline, 9,100 miles, it also has the most extensive inland waterways of any country in the world. China has secure access. Now, Vietnam was highly vulnerable to rapid air interdiction, but with China, it has something that is called the Eurasian Pole of Inaccessibility. This is the place that makes a spot within China is the most inaccessible from coastlines anywhere within Europe or Asia. And at its most inaccessible, it's 1,645 miles from the nearest coastline. So although China has a significant coastal area, it also has tremendous inland areas and tremendous inland waterways that give it relatively secure communications that are protected from air interdiction. So in conclusion, I just want to say that war with China would be an immensely risky and mammoth undertaking. The US would dominate the sea, but we would suffer huge naval losses from hypersonic missiles and submarines. Now, the US is militarily dominant. We're dominant in terms of the size and force of our Navy, Air Force, and ground forces. We're certainly more technologically advanced today. The same was true of the United States versus Vietnam during that war, which we lost. China is vastly more powerful and capable of in-depth defense. It is very difficult to envision an acceptable outcome of a war with China, and it is best that the United States exercise great caution and to put an end to this rather casual discussion of a war with China. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Colonel Black, for your statement. I think absolutely this is important to get out, and especially your stature and who you are coming from yourself. It's very, very meaningful. And I think people should just take note on this discussion today, that we should definitely share this out amongst our different groups. So thank you very much, Senator Black, for participating today. Next, I want to bring in for the discussion Ambassador Hussein Mousavian, who is the former ambassador from Iran to Germany. And you've been on this a number of times for this discussion, and we greatly appreciate your input and your insights into what's happening in the world. So thank you so much for joining us. Please go ahead. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Anastasia. Actually, I was asked to have a brief report on the latest discussion negotiations between Iran and the US. To be brief, as we all know, we have had 3 rounds of negotiations up to now. The first round was in Muscat on April 12. The second round was in Rome on April 19th. And both countries, after the 2 rounds of negotiations, openly and officially, they said the negotiations have been very constructive and positive. And frankly speaking, the progress in 2 rounds of negotiations was much more than expected. As far as I know, the principles they agreed is based on the following. First, the most important concern of the US and the West is about the 60% enrichment, the level of enrichment at 60%. Iran accepted to lower the enrichment to below 5%, which is only used for civilian purposes for nuclear power plants. The second major concern was about Iran's cooperation with the IAEA, International Energy Atomic Agency. After President Trump withdrew from JCPOA, the Iran nuclear deal, Iran decreased its level of cooperation with the IAEA as a reaction to the US withdrawal from the nuclear deal. Therefore, there are some ambiguities, some technical questions, which the US and the world powers, they passed a resolution last year asking Iran to cooperate with the IAEA to resolve the remaining technical questions. In these 2 rounds, Iran has accepted to go for full cooperation with the IAEA to resolve all ambiguities, to clarify, and to go for a highest level of transparency measures and to address the technical issues. The third concern was about the stockpile of enriched uranium to 60%, since Iran has about 300 kilograms of uranium enriched to 60% level. It is enough for making 7 nuclear bombs. Iran accepted to export these stockpiles to Russia in order to remove any concern whether Iran would make nuclear bomb with these stockpiles or not. Actually, this was the major 3 issues in order to remove the major concerns. in order to ensure the US would not go after nuclear bomb. And in return, the US agreed to lift the nuclear-related sanctions. After the second round in Rome on April 19th, they decided to begin immediately technical discussion by a technical team on April 23rd. And the two technical teams, they were supposed to prepare a draft of agreement about the outlines, about the principles between Iran and the US. And Steve Witkoff and Abbas Araghchi, they were supposed to meet in Oman on April 26 in order to finalize the draft and hopefully to sign the draft. Omanis, they were preparing themselves for a signature. However, just 2 days before, the progress was so successful that President Trump, after the second round, publicly, he said, I think we are doing very well. I think a deal is going to be made there. It's going to happen. Pretty sure it's going to happen. The US president was almost sure that the deal is going to be signed. Nevertheless, 1 or 2 days before the nuclear team, the technical team, they meet in Oman, Prime Minister Netanyahu called President Trump. And right after this phone conversation, the US postponed the travel of the US technical team to Oman, which we really don't know whether this was based on Netanyahu's request or what has happened, but it was postponed by the US side. And then Prime Minister Netanyahu had a public statement, and he said he has informed President Trump that Iran should not be allowed to enrich uranium, and the only deal would be accepted for Israel would be Libya model. We all know what is Libya model. The Libya model was when the Libya's nuclear facilities was completely dismantled. And after it was dismantled, NATO attacked Libya and destroyed Libya. This is exactly the model which Prime Minister Netanyahu publicly has said this is the only model they would accept. However, they agreed to have the third round of negotiations in Oman on April 26, despite of the fact the technical meetings there was canceled, which was supposed to be held on April 23rd, but they agreed to meet on April 26. But in between, what happened was actually the third round was happened. I mean, they met, but it was discovered the US position has changed, and a lot of difficulties has occurred in the meeting. It was clear that the US has had some major setbacks about what already agreed in the first and in the second term of talks. However, they agreed to meet tomorrow, May 23rd, but between April 26 to May 23rd, what has happened, it shows about the new complexity, the new complications, because Secretary of State Marco Rubio in an interview publicly said Iran must completely halt uranium enrichment. Iran must give access to American inspectors to inspect all Iranian nuclear facilities. Iran should walk away from enrichment, from terrorism, from long-range missiles. And I was really surprised. The Secretary of State said the only country in the world that enrich uranium are ones that have nuclear bomb. And if Iran does not want nuclear bomb, Iran should not have enrichment because there is no other non-nuclear weapon state with enrichment. It is a big mistake because everyone understands, everyone knows Japan, Argentina, Brazil, Germany, Netherlands, Spain, they are all countries which they have enrichment, but they do not have nuclear bomb. Therefore, we have many non-nuclear weapon states which they have enrichment, peaceful enrichment with no nuclear bomb. And I was really shocked how the Secretary of State made such a statement that only nuclear weapon states they have enrichment and no other country. And he practically justified his position, saying that the reason Iran wants enrichment is because of nuclear bomb. And then we had President Trump's statement, a decision. He said all purchases from Iranian oil or petrochemical products must stop now. Any country or person who buys any amount of oil or petrochemicals from Iran will be subjected to immediate secondary sanctions. They will not be allowed to business with the US if they make business with Iran. And this was a very shocking and surprising decision because they were just in between of negotiations. They just have agreed on the principles. They were going to meet and to sign an agreement on the principles. But the US president not only signed the maximum pressure policy before negotiations, but he escalated the pressures and sanctions to the highest possible level during the negotiations. And Charlie Kirk, 2 days ago, had a tweet. He wrote in his tweet that the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, FDD, everyone knows this is Israeli lobby. He said FDD is leading the anti-Witkoff operation. They are openly calling for people in the US administration to undermine President Trump's and stop a deal with Iran. And more interestingly, Donald Trump Jr. Wrote on this statement, he wrote, "Deep state neocons are smearing Steve Witkoff because they are trying to undermine my father's foreign policy agenda. The establishment wants forever war." This is what the son of a president tweeted just 1 or 2 days ago. And again, another interesting piece was the interview of Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard. She, in an interview with Megyn Kelly, said that the hawks are pressuring Trump to prevent peaceful nuclear deal with Iran. She referred to FDD and said they are pushing the US to drag the US in war with Iran. And she said what she believes the US security establishments, they believe it should be a deal based on verification, the highest level of verification as a best objective guarantees that Iranian nuclear program would remain peaceful. And what Steve Witkoff agreed with Iranian counterpart was based on verification. And the highest level of verification, full cooperation with the IAEA, lowering the enrichment to below 5%, exporting all stockpiles, high-level enriched uranium stockpiles, and so. I don't know whether you read also Senator Ted Cruz in an interview with Fox. He asked the president of Princeton University to fire me because I'm proposing peaceful nuclear diplomacy with Iran, avoiding US-Iran war. And he also asked the Department of Homeland Security to deport me from the US. However, in a tweet, I invited him to a public debate. And I asked him to come to a public debate and we leave the judgment to American people. And I wrote him, if you do not accept the offer, at least I ask you to read the books, some of the books and articles during last 15 years I have written during my work at Princeton University, and then you will see all of them focus on establishing peace between Iran and the US, introducing a peaceful solution to Iranian nuclear crisis based on non-proliferation treaty, avoiding dragging America into another devastating war in the Middle East, promoting peace, stability, and security in the Persian Gulf, and making Middle East free from all weapons of mass destruction. I also reminded Senator that you may do not know that I was arrested in 2007, accused of espionage in Iran. I was jailed and I was forced to leave the country in 2009. And still there is a prison sentence against me, which bans me from traveling to Iran. Nevertheless, I appealed to him, please do not obstruct President Trump's effort for peaceful resolving dispute with Iran on the nuclear issue, because the two leaders of Iran and the US, they both oppose nuclear bomb in Iran. Therefore, there is a good chance. And less than a day, Senator Cruz responded to my request, my invitation, and he rejected. And he wrote, you should only be deported from the US. This is, I mean, what practically happened after the two nuclear negotiations team, they met in Muscat and they were preparing a final draft. And everyone really hoped a draft would be signed maximum in the fourth round on May 3rd. It means tomorrow. However, again, the US has postponed it. The meeting was supposed to be held in Oman tomorrow, but they said they will meet on May 7th, next Wednesday. I don't know, with all these contradictory statements, about what Secretary of State Marco Rubio said, about what the chief of, Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, publicly said, about what President Trump publicly imposed new sanctions. I really don't know what is the U.S. Policy in the next term of negotiations, but I am confident, I have zero doubt, if they are going to deprive Iran from its legitimate rights under NPT, which includes peaceful enrichment, like other countries, like Brazil, like Argentina, then Iran would never accept any deal, even if the consequences is more sanctions or war. But if the US
I'm
would...
very sorry, Ambassador Mousavian, for interrupting you. We do have another person right after you.
Okay,
who
just
has to
stop.
go. Yeah,
Just
but
in
if
just
you
2
need,
seconds, 2-3 seconds.
yeah, please go ahead.
If the Witkoff is going to continue what they have agreed, a deal based on verification, Iran would continue to negotiate and to agree. Thank you, Mr.
I very much appreciate what you had to say, Ambassador Mousavian, and I think having this dialogue with Senator Black would be important. So maybe we can figure out how to get some discussion later on between the two of you would be very useful. I wanted to bring on for the discussion before he has to leave. His time is very limited, I just found out. We have on Ofer Bronstein, and I apologize if I am butchering your name. He's the former advisor to President Rabin. He's the president of the Paris-based International Peace Forum and author of a reconstruction plan for an independent, sovereign Palestinian state, including rail, energy, and water. And we very much appreciate you coming on and being part of the discussion today. Thank you for joining us. You're muted, my friend.
Sorry, my
There we go.
microphone was closed. Thank you for inviting me. I apologize already. I arrived late, and I have a Zoom conversation with Israel. As you know, I am advising President Macron as well on the relationship between Israeli and Palestinian, and things are on the move, including what Ambassador Hussein just mentioned. So I'm going to throw on the air I will be provocateur. I'll throw on the air a few things that I believe in, and I will be more happy to schedule with you another time. I congratulate all of you for being involved in wishing peace and working for it all over the world. It's needed more than ever. You know, I think Martin Luther King said once, if the peace camp has the same mean than the war camp, it will be peace in the world. The country of the Middle East spent $200 billion in buying weapons in the last 2 years, while the reconstruction of Gaza and make it an amazing place after this catastrophe is ending will cost less than $60 billion. So this is what we are for, building a hope and a good future for 2 million Palestinians in Gaza, or continuing buying weapons for billions and billions of dollars. That's the first thing. As you know, and Iran is part of them, we're spending a lot of money, a lot of energy in arming themselves. I don't understand what's the purpose of having a nuclear bomb in the world, not only in the region. And I don't understand why the Iranians are putting so much money from their people into it. But I'm going to surprise you, and I think that the American president is going to surprise us, which is not new. He's surprising all the time. But in my case, which is the Middle East, I think that the deal with Iran will happen soon. I believe that his next trip to Saudi Arabia in 2 weeks will be fruitful. I believe that he's going to tell Mr. Netanyahu enough is enough. And I believe that after this, I believe that in every crisis, and the Israelis and the Palestinians are living the worst crisis ever, lack of empathy from one side to another one. But I believe that in very deep crisis, we have opportunities. And when this war will end, it will be time for the international community to get seriously involved. And I'm being a very strong and committed European. I believe that it's time for Europe to act and to play a major role in the Middle East. It's time to promote the two-state solution everybody's talking about for 40 years, but it's not happening. So I think that the French and the Saudi initiative calling for a two-state, the Arab and the Muslim world to recognize Israel, and the Western world, the country that did not recognize, to recognize the state of Palestine, hoping that the new state of Palestine and the state of Israel will be courageous enough to recognize one each other as soon as possible. And one more thing, and again, I apologize that I have to leave you because we're very busy trying to create a big coalition around this Saudi-French initiative. Then we will all will meet in a conference about it in the UN in June, which is soon, and a lot has to still be done. Let me tell you what the four things that I believe needs in any peace involvement. It's humility, and I think that it's a lack of humility from the Israeli towards the Palestinian, and the Palestinian feel very, very how can I say, it's not only victim of a terrible situation, but they feel that they're a victim of arrogance. It's not that the Palestinian or the Hamas especially don't have a responsibility, but the Israeli is a powerful side in this story, and the powerful needs to be more generous than the weaker one. We'll need solidarity between the people. We need cooperation between the people, and we need forgiveness. And I think that the experience in Ireland and in South Africa of people forgiving one each other is a very important one. I do believe that forgiveness, it's a strength, it's not weakness. Only strong people forgive one to each other. Weak people are seeking for revenge, and strong people are forgiving. And if I have to concentrate the Israeli-Palestinian conflict in only two words, I would say that the problem is a narrative. Each one of the people are saying their own story, convening for their own political agenda. And I think that the narrative will have to change between the two people to find a common one, because the difference between people and animal, it's only telling story. We are telling story, animal don't. And the second thing then, they will have to respect one to each other. It's a sovereignty. If the Palestinian will feel equal to the Israeli, they will be able to talk one to each other in another manner and find solutions. A peace is being done between enemies, and peace is based on compromise. So I hope then a new leadership in Israel and Palestine will be willing to do compromise and will be humble enough to move forward. I'm not sure that it's possible in the near future. That's why I strongly believe that once and for all, the involvement of the international community and especially of Europe is needed. I think that a coalition between Europe, the American, is going to be created soon about it. And if the American and the European, mainly the French, will recognize the Palestinian state, that will mean that 4 out of 5 permanent representative in the UN. I'm sorry, I'm tired. The UN executive. I forgot the title, but the people who are running the UN are 4 countries: the Russian, the Chinese, the
Security
French.
Council.
The Security Council. Thank you very much, sir. I'm sorry. So we have 5 countries running the UN: Chinese, Russian, French, British, and the United States. Out of these 5, 2 already recognized the Palestinian state and recognized Israel. It's the Russian and the Chinese. I believe that very soon it will be the French and the Brits. So if there will be 4, I won't be surprised, and the American will join soon. So it will be a great achievement, and to ask for the Saudis and other Arab countries to recognize Israel. Only peace will give the Israelis the security that we're seeking for, and only peace will give the Palestinian the freedom that they deserve. I will stop here. I will be very happy to meet you again and to discuss with this issue. And I believe that whatever I told you is good for any other conflict in the world. And last, I believe that in the 21st century, the one that we will have a strong say in the future for the future generation is the one that was the most denied and the most humiliated toward history, and I mean the woman. I believe that the woman will have a very, very important role to play in the near future. This is all what I have to say.
Thank you.
And I apologize again for being short, for being late, and for having to end this conversation with you. I'll be very happy to meet you again.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bronstein.
Thank you
If
very
you could just stay on for 2 more minutes, just 2
Okay.
more minutes. I know you have a meeting. The initiator of the IPC, Helga Tsepp-LaRouche, I just wanted to see if she has a response to you before you have to go. You're
Okay.
very busy and doing lots of important things.
Sure,
Thank
sure, sure.
Yeah, Mr. Bronstein, I'm very happy that you are with us. At the beginning of this session, I was making an appeal to all participants of the IPC to go with us in a 5 weeks mobilization to intersect the June conference on the two-state solution. I know that you had a very good discussion with our representative in France of the Schiller Institute, Mr. Karel Verreken, and so I know you are briefed on the OASIS plan. And I really think deeply that, the OASIS plan would be, together with the two-state solution and the Egyptian plan for the reconstruction of Gaza, make a package which would not only have a perspective for Gaza, but to go beyond status quo and go into the direction of a real peace plan for the Middle East. So, I'm very happy that you are in contact and mediating with President Macron and Saudi Arabia, because we had many conferences, including Palestinian ambassadors and other officials, and they all said we need governments, because we can have a lot of mobilization, but we need finally governments to act and implement it. So I would like to just communicate that to you, that, and if you have further contact, we can discuss it further. But I just wanted to tell you that we are committed the next 5 weeks to do everything in our power to aid that process.
One thing about water, Prime Minister Rabin in 1993, when he signed what we call the Oslo Agreement with Yasser Arafat, said in his speech that if we won't find a deal to agreement on water issue, it won't be peace. Water is essential in the region, is essential in the world, and absolutely, it's many other plans on the table. I think that the Oasis one is one of them. I think that at one point we will have to put all our energy together and to promote something important on water. It's essential for peace. Without water agreement, it won't be peace. So thank you very much.
I think that a vision of how the entire Middle East can be transformed and the desert can be greened, is something which will give hope to especially young people. And desertification is something eminently feasible with modern technology. So rather than looking at the desert, let's look at a future where everybody has a chance to have a meaningful life. So thank you again for being with us.
Thank you. All right, wonderful. That was very wonderful to have you on for this, and we look forward to the next discussion. I think it would actually be great to have you, Mr. Kutab, on with Mr. Bronstein again in the future, given the fact that Kutab, you also were an advisor on the Oslo Accord as well. So this is probably have met or known one another. But I'd like to invite Jonathan Kutab, who is an international human rights lawyer, executive director of Friends of Sabeel North America, and co-founder of Nonviolence International, to speak. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Kutab. Oh, you're muted, my friend.
I will try to keep my comments very brief because I only have 10 minutes, although I am very eager to have the type of discussion that is necessary for the broader issues involved. I'm actually caught between the need to do something immediately to put an end to an ongoing genocide, the starvation of people, the utter impunity of ignoring international law, and I think in American terms, it's like, get your knee off my neck. I can't breathe. Our people are daily being starved to death, daily being bombed, with no longer even an excuse that we are trying to hit military target. They are openly saying we are going to destroy everything. We're going to level everything. We're going to destroy all the hospitals, all the bakeries, all the food storage facilities, all the water treatment facilities. Everything is going to be flattened. Everybody is a target, especially journalists. They are targets. We've had more journalists killed in Gaza than in the Civil War, the two World Wars, the Vietnam War, the European war in Ukraine, Yugoslavia, put together. Over 230 journalists, and they are being targeted through artificial intelligence to kill them together with their families and surroundings. So there is an immediate task that needs to be done. We've never had a situation which is so easy to address. At least just allow the food in. At least just stop the ongoing genocide. At least just prevent the literal starvation of a population that we see. So this is an immediate task that I think the world community has failed to address sufficiently, and that it can address. The second point, again, within my very short time, is one that is an international one. That is, we now see a deliberate attack on international institutions, international courts, and international law itself. And we hear that from the right wing in Israel all the time. This is our opportunity. Nobody in the world cares. The international community is paralyzed. They can do nothing. They just have demonstrations in the streets and we can ignore them. As long as, even in the United States, we can ignore public opinion, we can ignore the Jewish community, which, thank God, many of them are standing up to say, this is not correct, this is not right. They are ignoring international courts. In fact, they are attacking the international courts and its judges and its prosecutors and imposing punishments upon them. The Europeans have failed miserably in their job to enforce the decisions of the International Criminal Court, as well as the International Court of Justice, which has issued a number of very significant decisions about the illegality of the occupation and the obligations of states to ensure compliance with international law, including the Geneva Conventions and other just very basic principles of international law. You can't use starvation as a weapon. You cannot destroy water resources. You cannot use collective punishments. You cannot use the local population as a means to pressure and punish your opponents. You cannot treat prisoners as inhuman. You know, to starve your prisoners. Actually, prisoners are being starved to death. They are being denied basic hygienic supplies, visits. They are all, when they leave prisons, they have lost 40 or 50 pounds of weight. They look like people coming out of concentration camps. It is absolutely horrible. And I think that unless we can take some specific action to restore respect for and compliance with international law. This is no longer an issue of Palestine and Palestinians. Somehow the Palestinian people are going to survive. But will international law itself survive? Will international institutions survive? Will we have the ability to live in a world that is governed by international law rather than by the whims of whoever is in power and whoever is in control? So in this sense, in this forum especially, I am very concerned that we take seriously the issue of international law, international values and norms, and the obligation not only of governments, definitely of governments, but also of civil society to pressure their governments into compliance with international law. I am right now in the United States, where there is a president that openly says international law means nothing. America first. I will do what I want, when I want, as I want. And it's totally arbitrary, and it's throwing the entire international community and trade into a huge confusion. We need more than ever before an international system that is responsive to the challenges and needs of the situation, not only on issues of war and peace, the Palestinian, the Ukrainian, and others, but also on issues of pandemics and diseases, on issues of global warming, on issues of artificial intelligence. The international community is today totally interconnected. We can no longer act as separate countries, each of which pursuing its own desires or its own interests without reference to the needs of others. So we absolutely desperately need international law. Helga spoke about the old order is being destroyed and the new order is slowly arising. Whatever this new order is, it must contain international law and international principles that are applied across the board to all countries, regardless of one's individual, tribal, or national interests. I think this is all the time that I'm allowed, and I'm open for questions and discussions of how we can bring that about.
Greatly appreciate your participation in this, Mr. Kutab. And personally, I very much agree with you that the upholding of international law must be kept. This is something, it's actually an atrocity that it's been going on for so long that many nations have not been able to comply with international law and have been allowed to get away with this genocide and other war issues. And I think that what we do here in this discussion and you addressing us here today is part of our responsibility to go out and organize in the many different nations that we're in. So thank you very much for that. We're already getting, I've got 15 questions that are popping in, which is why I want to quickly go through the last few speakers. We do have a video that has come in from Mawaz Inan, who's an Israeli peace activist, leader of the peace demonstration in Jerusalem on May 8th and 9th, the People's Peace Summit. And people should just be aware. I actually went to go look to find this demonstration that just happened this past week, where Israeli activists were holding pictures of the killed Palestinian children in the demonstration, and I can't find it anywhere. I can't find the images and videos anywhere now. I know I saw them. I'm not crazy. And I can only find reports now of these videos. I believe it's been contraband. So if anybody has a downloaded video of that, of the 10,000 people who were out in Tel Aviv who were demonstrating, I would really appreciate that, receiving that video. But Mawaz Inan was one of the participants in that demonstration in Tel Aviv. So I'd like to show his video on what's been happening there.
Yes, hello. This is Gerald Belsky with the Schiller Institute and the International Peace Coalition. And we are speaking with Mawaz Inan. Mawaz Inan is a noted Israeli peace activist whose parents were killed on October the 7th. And he has been fighting for peace, reconciliation, no revenge, and the idea of a future. So, Mawaz, would you explain your concept of peace, your campaign, and what you are now doing?
Yeah. First, Gerald, I'm so happy and thrilled and honored to be here with you and with your coalition and with your audience. And I hope it's just the beginning of our partnership and relationship.
Absolutely.
So we believe we have 5 steps theory of change, how to make a dream into a reality. Both Aziz Abu Sara, my Palestinian partner, and myself were practicing it in our previous life as businessmen and tourism entrepreneurs, And now we implement it into the peacemaking. Step number one is to dream. With no vision, people perish. That's from the Bible. So we must have a dream. We need to find our common ground and shared values. For our partnership, for peace, it's equality and dignity, shared acknowledgement and recognition, reconciliation and healing, security and safety. We are establishing our dream based on those values. The third step, which I think we are totally aligned, is to build a coalition, because no one can fulfill big dreams on his own. So we must form very powerful coalition of Israelis and Palestinians with international support and allies. So this is why I'm thrilled that we are here today. The 4 steps is having a roadmap, because while we have seen the promised land in our dream, without a roadmap, how would we know how to get there? So we must have a very detailed roadmap. And the 5th steps is to walk the talk, to start executing the roadmap that we have built. And we have built a roadmap. Again, very simple one with only 5 chapters. Chapter number 1 is to dream. In the last 18 months, I've been going through a spiritual and transformation. We met world leaders such as late Pope Francis, but other spiritual leaders, faith leaders, scientists. And we learned that the only way to change reality is in the field of dream. We must dream, and we must be very proud that we have a dream. So this is chapter number 1. Chapter number 2 is to amplify our dream. We need to shout it. We need to talk about it. We need to dance it. We need to sing it. We need to do everything we can to amplify the dream. Chapter number 2 is legitimize the dream. Legitimize peace, because those who believe that wall will defend, bombs will bring quiet, and war will bring security, they've been failing all throughout human history. I'm the evidence. The wall that was shadowing my parents' house, only 200 meters from their house, was the highest, most invested barrier humanity ever built. But it took Hamas few minutes to break the wall and to kill my parents and to burn them alive. The only way to bring security and safety is through diplomacy, through conflict resolution, through negotiation. So we need to legitimize this, because unfortunately too many have forgot the most important lessons we learned throughout history. The 4th chapter is to change policy. What is being sent now to the region, to the Middle East, is only weapon. So of course, when we throw weapon, we're going to harvest bloodshed. We must change the policy, start investing in dialogue, in shared life initiatives, in reconciliation. And the 5th chapter is to create the political will. The political will that will force politicians to sit in a room and start negotiating. And what we must ensure is that this room will be gender equal, because it's been proven that if it's the negotiation room is gender equal, the percentages of success will go higher in 40%. We need to make sure there will be not only politicians, generals, and lawyers in this room, but we need spiritual leaders, we need faith leaders, we need musicians, we need educators, we need reconciliation experts. And then they will sit, maybe for a few hours, but maybe for a few days or weeks, and they will come out with the only possible solution: peace.
Well, let me ask you this, Maoz. There have been major demonstrations in Israel against Netanyahu, but the question of, and then there was a demonstration I noted in Tel Aviv recently, sponsored by one of the members of the coalition you work with, Standing Together, holding pictures of both Israeli children who've been killed and the hostages. How far do you see in Israel the opinion going toward ending this war and collaborating for a peace process.
So I was there in this anti-war demonstration, and together with my sister Mayan, we hold a photo of two children from Gaza, brother and sister that were killed in the war. The only thing good in opinion and in discourse that is very, very flexible. You can change it very fast. And the discourse nowadays is similar exactly, but to this exactly same like the discourse that was 4 years after the Yom Kippur War in 1973. The majority, vast majority of Jewish Israelis were against negotiation with Egypt. Moshe Dayan said it's better to have Sinai Peninsula with no peace than peace without Sinai Peninsula. And Golda said there will be no peace in our lifetime. And only 4 years after the war, most devastating war Israel ever experienced, including the war now, President Sadat is coming to Israel. And the children of Israel are waving with two flags in Tel Aviv, in Beersheba, Haifa, and Jerusalem. The flag of Israel and the flag of Israel's biggest enemy to the day, the flag of Egypt.
One idea which we have been promoting for decades, which was developed by the late economist Lyndon LaRouche, who, by the way, was attacked as an anti-Semite for calling for this. But he called for a peace in Israel and Palestine back in 1975 based on developing a common mutual interest of everybody: water. You must increase the flow of water for two states. You must bring in development, therefore irrigate the deserts, bring in desalination facilities, preferably through small nuclear reactors. This is being discussed now in the region.
Again, it's a great tool. We need to use many tools. There is a toolkit, and we need to use all tools that are available to us. And this is a great tool. And it's not just water, it's also air and land. Now, while we are doing this interview, there is a wildfire between Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. And the road, highway number 1, is totally blocked. So while we are sacrificing our life for land, we are compromising our future that we don't invest enough in climate change, in water supply, and in infrastructure that will allow us to live on this land. So this is why, and for me, so again, there are also many solutions on the table. So sometimes I'm being asked, so are you pro one state? Are you pro two-state solution? Are you pro confederation? So I'm saying what I care about, I care most is the values. Because there can be two states like Russia and Ukraine that will wage war on each other. There can be one state like Rwanda that the Hutu and Tutsi will genocide each other. So what's most important is that we reach a common ground, a shared values, and we it's not just Israelis and Palestinians. We human beings have so much in common. So much in common. But politicians that thrive over polarization, over division, over hate and fear they hijacked not just our past and present, they want to hijack our future. And that's why we need to coalesce, to be aligned together, and to take our future back into our hand.
Great, thank you for that. I've been receiving some of the images that I had requested, so I appreciate that. I'll show these later on during the discussion when I can pull them up easily. But I appreciate us getting this video and report from on the ground there, and what Mr. Inan has been up to. So I'd like to go to, we have one more short presentation, and then we'll go to the general discussion. I see we have tons of questions coming in. I don't want to keep people waiting on that, especially since we have so many distinguished people ready to speak. So I'd like to bring on Robert Castle, who who is he's going to be a participant and speaker at the International Conference coming up May 24th, 25th. He'll be on the youth panel speaking there, and he's going to give a report on the various outreach that he and others have been doing, as well as what to expect on this upcoming conference for the youth panel. Please go ahead, Robert Castle.
Hi, can I be heard?
Yes, you can, loud and clear.
Great. Well, yeah, thank you for having me on. And I just want to begin by saying that I want to thank all of the distinguished panelists for their extremely important presentations. And I'm very aware of the responsibility of participating in such a critical dialogue. So thank you. Yeah, just quickly, the work that we have been doing through Jose Vega's independent campaign in the Bronx in New York City, and more broadly, has been primarily over the last 2 months directly going to college campuses. And in that process, we have been intersecting students on the way to their classes and directly posing the questions, many of the questions that were being discussed on this panel today, directly to these students, and really challenging the young citizens of our republic to ask themselves whether or not they have a moral responsibility to intervene in this process and for the good. And so we've had, hundreds of conversations, and the response is mixed, largely, I think, due to the cultural crisis that our country is facing right now. There's definitely an air of pessimism and even nihilism among the young generation of Americans today, but that, I think, is very clearly a result of the influence of the culture, and obviously not of their human nature. And what you see when you speak to young people in their teens and early 20s is that there's a very definite sense of moral purpose and a sense of moral clarity about what's happening, despite any particular narratives. So I'm very hopeful that we can get a lot of young people from the colleges to come to our conference and listen to our panel. I'll show some pictures really quick, and then I will talk about what we're going to discuss on the youth panel at the conference. So hopefully I have the ability to share the screen. You can see that?
Yes, we can see it now.
We have a bunch of pictures. I'm just going to go through some of them to show you. We're having a great time talking to people, and there's, as I said, a real response to the ideas of the possible return of the United States to a role of sovereignty among a community of sovereign nation states, as opposed to being a world hegemon. So those are the pictures. That's just a sample of some of the conversations we've been having. You can see the sign we have here on the last slide features the World Land Bridge concept that was conceptualized by the LaRouche Organization, the Schiller Institute, starting in the 1990s, with the Oasis Plan here featured as a key development project for the organization of peace instead of war as a basis for economic recovery in the United States, as well as in other countries around the world. So yeah, it is that vision of a positive role that the United States can play, which is in accordance with its founding principles, as opposed to the ideology of selfishness and pessimism, which has really run rampant in our country for so long over the last, especially 70 years, that we're going to be discussing on the panel. And in order to do that, we're going to go into some of the historical lineage reaching back to the Golden Renaissance of Italy, with people like Johannes Kepler, as well as American writers like Edgar Allan Poe, who many people don't realize was a self-consciously fighting very strongly on behalf of the continuation of the principles of the United States of America. So the panels are going to cover some of these different questions about the better angels of our nature throughout American history, and then ask the question, how do we project those principles into the next 50 years?
Wonderful. Thank you, Robert, for that short presentation on what's going to happen. I'll include the link for people to go and register for the conference. If people are in the area, in the New York City area, please attend in person. It'd be wonderful to see everyone. If you know any young people especially, please send them the invitation to join. We can, especially if people are really excited about joining and maybe are struggling, we can forego some of the ticketing and bring in certain young people to the discussion if they're really excited about going in person. So please just let us know, send us a message, and we're happy to figure things out. So I'm including the links for that below. So thank you very much for that. We're going to continue and wrap up this first portion of it. I wanted to just ask Helga if you had any response to anything thus far. We still have Mr. Kutab on. A couple of other people had to jump off, but I wanted to see if you wanted to say anything before we went to the general discussion.
Yes, very briefly. I think what Mr. Kutab expressed, that I fully agree with, that it's not just about Gaza and the horrible genocide against the Palestinians. I think there is a much larger issue involved, which may not be in the headlines every day, but I think that the non-response of the world community to this ongoing genocide is the biggest threat to the cohesion of our world order and the loss of international law and the danger of a plunge into a complete system of barbarism, of lawlessness and law of the jungle. It's already on the forefront and becoming stronger. So I want to reiterate that I really think that the only way to address that is by calling for an international security and development architecture, because countries and peoples have to agree again on principles which must be the foundation of international law. In the same way, like the Peace of Westphalia did found international law, which did not exist before. And in the same way, I think such a renewed affirmation of what are the principles we are standing on, I think is the only remedy for this situation, in my view.
Thank you. And Mr. Kutab, if you would like to say anything before we move to the general discussion in response to Helga or anything said thus far.
Yeah,
please.
I thank Lady Helga for her comment. Yes, this is far beyond the issue of just the Palestinians or any particular danger or tragedy. We are all in this together, and she is correct. International law didn't arise because the powerful people decided to do it. It was a grassroots civil society, professors, intellectuals who said, this is horrible what we have seen in World War II. It must end. It must stop. We must put new regulations. We must create new institutions. We must have treaties and conventions. And those who are in power had to accept it. They tried to wriggle around it, to have the veto power for the Security Council and other methods so that they could continue to defend their interests. But it was regular people who said, we cannot live as a human race in a situation where there are no rules. We need the rules, and the rules need to apply to everybody equally. That's the only way we can survive as a human race.
Thank you. Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Kutab, for that. So we are going to go to the general discussion period with the participants, which we've had somewhere around 300 people on and off throughout on the Zoom. We have another whatever has been on over YouTube and Rumble and X. There's generally around 1,000 people that are participating live every week, which we greatly appreciate. If you'd like to be part of the discussion with the panelists and the rest of us here, please go to schillerinstitute.com, and right on the top of the page, you'll see an RSVP page. You must be registered, and you will get the link, the Zoom link to join the discussion. And with that, Dave, just let us know when we've cut the stream and we'll move on to the discussion period.